tell you what, I've been holding this in as a neutral for a while now, but there's something I need to talk about. Now, I weren't there at Accrington today, so I can't really do a video on the Accrington-Doncaster match. I've got to watch it on iFollow first and then talk about it. But there's something I want to talk about first, and it's to do with the Premier League this weekend. We need to speak about ERIK Ten Hag and Manchester United because I've been trying to hold it in as a neutral for a while now, but now I need to speak on this because it's getting beyond a joke. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I am the CHALL and welcome to this video. Now, this is a neutral perspective. I'm going to be completely honest about this. I've got no loyalties to anyone Manchester United, so I'm going to be completely brutally honest with this. I'm going to speak on a neutral head or speak as calmly as I can about this as a neutral. But it's been something that's been bothering me for a while now as a neutral, watching the Premier League and keeping an eye on the Premiership product. Manchester United and ERIK Ten Hag. Now, I want to say straight off the bat that I'm going to say straight off the bat that I do not blame 100% ERIK Ten Hag on this situation. Now, the reason why I say that is because he can only work with what he's got to work with. What's happening at Manchester United now is a recuperation of years of mistakes from the people who run that football club, and the noise around the Glazers should not be, died down. As a neutral, I am fully Glazers out. And the reason why I'm Glazers out as a neutral is because the Glazers, in my personal opinion, for what Manchester United need to be doing on a consistent basis at their level to reach the trophies that they need to win to stay consistently one of the best clubs in the world, things like the Premier League, FA Cup, the Champions League, the League Cup. Yes, they did win a League Cup, about 7-8 years ago under Jose Mourinho. And meanwhile, can I just say, the line-up tonight against Bournemouth, when they lost 3-0, nearly half of that team was still under Jose Mourinho. There's at least 4 players in there that worked under Jose Mourinho, 5 players in there that worked under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And there'll be some on the bench as well and some on the injury list. But the thing is with Manchester United, to reach those levels of consistency, to win consistent trophies on a regular basis, they need a certain quality of player, not just long-term but short-term as well, with the experience to drive them forward. There are players in that squad that, in my personal opinion, aren't the levels of what Manchester United need to reach in order to win things. In my personal opinion, and I can only be as brutally honest as I can, players like Scott McTominay, players like Anthony Martial, players like, in my personal opinion, Harry Maguire, players like, he's shown it over the last few weeks, but it's still a recent signing, Andre Onana, players at the moment, in terms of what they're showing in terms of their attitude and what they're showing sometimes on the pitch, I've got to say, something's up with Marcus Rashford, and I've known that for a while now. Something is up with Marcus Rashford. I'm not going to delay the fact that he's not a good player because he's a fantastic player on his day. But right now, he's not showing it, which is why he's been dropped to the bench for, the second week running by ERIK Ten Hag, and that shows balls by the manager, by the way. Marcus Rashford is not showing enough. Maguire, for Maguire, this is the best form he's had. For Maguire, this is the best form he's had in his career at Manchester United, and it's only lasted, for a few weeks. Maguire, in my personal opinion, I still worry about Harry Maguire because I know there's potentially a mistake in that player. But fair play to Harry Maguire, where he's been in a situation where he has been under the thumb. And to be fair, so he should have been. Because Harry Maguire's been under a thumb for his performances by the fans, and rightly so. Should people step over the line and abuse them? No. I absolutely, categorically cannot stand for personal abuse on football players. If people have done that, they're a disgrace, they're disgusting, and don't deserve to be part of any fan base in the sport. Don't need to be part of any fan base in anything, or any culture, or any community. Anyone who abuses these players on a personal level do not deserve to be in society, let alone in the sport. But constructive criticism and criticism of performances, you're allowed to do that. That is part of freedom of speech. Constructive criticism. Criticism of performances and what they need to do to improve every single week. I know some people don't do that, but some people do that. And right now, I think they're being drowned out by the abusive lot. Players like Harry Maguire have been on fine form at the moment. Apart from the disallowed 4th goal against Bournemouth, where he was caught out of possession, the first goal where he was part of a defence and goalkeeper that kind of made their mistakes involved in the first goal, I thought it was all right. It wasn't great, but it was all right. For me, though, and this is the big thing here with United, the longevity of some of their players that have been here a long time and haven't won anything. And it's that level of standard that's declined over season after season after season. And I'm going to talk a bit later about why I think getting rid of Erik ten Hag is not the solution. But certain players, like I've just mentioned there, players like Maguire, people like McTominay, people like Martial, players there that have just not been up to a certain standard overall. Obviously, Maguire's had his good form in the last few weeks and that. But there are players over years where their average form hasn't been up to the standard where they're in a position to go and try to win things. Manchester United, and this is why I don't think Erik ten Hag is the main problem. And don't get me wrong, Erik ten Hag is not, for 1 second, I'm not saying he's not exempt from criticism. There are certain things that he shouldn't have done in that game against Bournemouth especially, but he's done it in other games as well. His substitutions, for example, Scott McTominay, why was he still on that pitch? If he was performing as bad as what he was showing, why was he not brought off the pitch? Bruno Fernandes, he's about to go into the book. He's about to get his 5th yellow card, which means he's exempt from the Liverpool game next week. Why didn't he bring him off? And then you could see it on the pitch. I think Bruno, for me, looked like he was purposely getting the yellow card so he didn't have to play in that game next week. But this is the level and the standard and the current team morale of where United are right now. And I'm not going to name names in terms of the collective of Manchester United, but I have a very big gut feeling that a collective at Manchester United's playing squad are again trying to throw another manager under the bus. Whether they do that, that's them to come out and admit that or deny that. And of course, people may say they denied that, but they don't believe them. That's their own opinion. And that's, again, freedom of speech. But the thing is I've got a gut feeling that United are going to throw another manager under the bus. And the Glazers putting that extra protection on Ten Hag, in my personal opinion, will fuel the Ten Hag outers even more, turn the aggression on the Glazers, but the majority of the aggression will be on Ten Hag because he's the one they trust. And so there's more of a chance they're going to throw him under the bus within a month or two. And the reason why I think they'll do that is because we've seen it before. We've seen Ole thrown under a bus. We've seen Mourinho thrown under a bus. We've seen LVG thrown under the bus at United. We've even seen David Moyes, in my opinion, thrown under the bus. And I will stand by, even those years ago, and people can come at me about this whatever they want, I'm still under the impression, in my personal opinion, that David Moyes didn't get long enough at Manchester United. I will take that to the day I die. David Moyes had too short a time at Manchester United back in the day, because what happened was some of the best players were coming towards the end of their prime. They were coming into their later years, and some of them could not keep up with the speed and the progression of pace that was coming into the Premier League, with the returning Jose Mourinho, with Manuel Pellegrini coming into City and bam, winning a title, with Brendan Rodgers' project at Liverpool before it was taken over by the now manager Jurgen Klopp. There was a pace that this Premier League was evolving into. And we see it with other teams as well. There was other teams in that league that were starting to progress it. Even before Rodgers joined Liverpool, his project at Swansea was progressing rapidly. And that was such a huge, exciting project. The promotion to the Premier League, they did pretty well. Rodgers earned the opportunity at Liverpool. It didn't quite work out in the end. He built the foundations for Klopp to sprinkle that trophy dust on, and it worked. So can it work again? That's another story. But with Ten Hag, for me, he's been thrown under the bus. And I think there's players in there that, I'm not going to name names again, but I generally think there are some players in that Man United squad that are generally going to throw him under the bus and then turn up for the next man to the end of the season so they can earn themselves their next new bumper contract and, earn that load of money so they can try and test it under another manager and then throw them under the bus. Changing manager will not change how Man United operate as a football club and as a business, because the Glazers control the football club right now. Hopefully not total control for much longer with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid announcement expected at some point. But again, I said this to my dad, who's a United fan. He's been a United fan since the 80s. I said to him, I won't be surprised if they kept delaying the Sir Jim announcement and something happens before the end of the season where, there's an announcement that Sir Jim ends up walking away from Man United in the end because they keep delaying the announcement and keep delaying the paperwork and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. I could be wrong, could be very much wrong, but I won't be surprised if something like that happens. Because right now the Glazers are running the Manchester United Football Club into the ground with the way they operate the business, the way they're operated on debt, the way they bought the club on debt, the way they've got loads of debt still in the club that's just unsavable at the moment. And I generally don't. I mean, there's been investigations of FFP within the Premier League in recent months, with Everton's 10-point deduction, with the 115 charges at Manchester City, with the investigations at Chelsea. Obviously there was an investigation about Spurs as well. There was the headline about the Jermaine Defoe transfer getting involved in Spurs and Portsmouth back in the day. I wouldn't be surprised if Man United get investigated at some point, because to operate on that much amount of debt, surely there must be either doing some very clever loopholing or something's going on behind the scenes at United, because it looks like there might be not much money for January, which if I was Ten Hag, I'd be walking away rather than getting sad. So if I had no money for January after what I've been thrown into, despite the fact, did Ten Hag win Manager of the Month recently as well? And Harry Maguire won Player of the Month recently? If I was Ten Hag and I was told you've got no money for January because of this, this, and this, I'd be going, right, I was promised this, this, and this. I can't build a project on lies, and I can't build a project with no money. Screw you, I'm walking away. Sorry to the fans for putting you in this situation. I'm going to go bye-bye. And Ten Hag might, go back to Ajax, or he might go somewhere else. But the problem is, Ten Hag isn't the problem. The people who run Manchester United are the problem. And that noise has died down. If you are a Ten Hag outer, in my personal opinion, yes, he's not exempt from criticism. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying about Erik Ten Hag is he's not the problem. And some of these people that are Ten Hag out are, in my opinion, I'm not calling you stupid or anything like that, but you are falling into this money trap where the Glazers will throw him under the bus, bring in a new manager, the stock and the PR and the selling of this new manager will rise into their bank accounts, and the profit won't go back into the club. The profit will go back into the Glazers' pocket, in my opinion. And what will happen is, give it 2-3 years maybe. I mean, 3 years if you're lucky like Mourinho, but give it 2 years at the very minimum, and it will start to fall and fall. People get thrown under the bus. They'll promise these changes. And what will happen is, unless this takeover happens and some of the control gets taken away from the Glazers, it's going to happen again under a new manager, whether that's Graham Potter, whether that's Roberto De Zerbi, whether that's Luis Enrique, whether that is anyone. It's going to happen again within 2 to 3 years. And it's a constant 2-3 year cycle of profit loss and reinvestment into the owner's pocket, in my personal opinion. And I keep saying my personal opinion because we don't know if that's fact yet. People can draw that up if they want. But I still stand where I stand on Manchester United as a neutral, because I've seen it. I've watched it as a neutral over years and years and years of what's happened with previous managers. Yes, some previous managers did make their mistakes, and we're not exempting them from that. Ten Hag is the same, Ole's the same, Jose Mourinho is the same, Louis van Gaal's the same, David Moyes is the same. But what I can't get away from is the fact that Manchester United are letting another manager fall under the bus, and some of the fans are going to let this happen because they're bought into this, in what I call the Glazeronomics trap. But players have to take responsibility. I mean, I've just been on KG's live, the call-in show, the five thoughts call-in show, and some guy said it on there. Make the players go to the fans at the end of the game and apologize. We've seen clubs lower down. We refunded our fans after a 6-0 loss against Ipswich in League One a couple of years ago under Richie Wellens. I think Barrow recently went out of the FA Cup to Maidstone 2-1. It was obviously Maidstone, it's their first time ever in their history going into the next round. And Barrow refunded their fans despite the fact they're third in League Two and could be about to go to League One for the first time in, their whole history. And they still put a post out saying we're refunding fans for that performance. They've got the class to do it. Why don't Manchester United refund fans? Why don't Manchester United refund the fans that travel away? Imagine if Man United travelled in the FA Cup to, I think they're out now, but Plymouth Argyle. Let's say they travelled to Plymouth Argyle or somewhere in Devon or Cumbria or whatever. Could you imagine if they lost 4-0 to a side in League Two or a non-league side in an FA Cup round in the future to somewhere that was like 3-4 hours away? You would refund fans as a kind gesture to your fans, the people who come and support you, no matter what. You're not going to do that? Are you not going to help them? I mean, I just don't know what more to say about this. I don't know what more to say about this as a neutral. It's getting me wound up, but it shouldn't be getting me wound up because I'm a neutral in this situation. It shouldn't be getting me this wound up. But I don't stand it. I can't stand it when football clubs just take the mickey out of their supporters, in my personal opinion. I just think so much is going on at Manchester United that needs sorting out, and it needs sorting out as soon as possible. I fear for Manchester United in January. I mean, they're talking about new contracts for Victor Lindelof, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and Anthony Martial. Lindelof, decent player, but is he good enough to start for Manchester United if you have Varane there? I mean, but by the way, there's talk of Casemiro and Varane being up for sale. I mean, I don't know where that's from, but if that's true, if Casemiro and Varane are going to leave in January, then my God, what's going to happen to that defence? You're going to have Maguire, Lindelof on a new contract, Johnny Evans as centre backs. You might have the odd youth academy prospect getting brought up who could do a better job than some of the senior players. I generally think that. If Varane and Casemiro goes, if Casemiro goes, he was, in my opinion, United's best midfielder. And if he goes in January, you've got a Bruno Fernandes who's inconsistent and still captains the team. You've got a Scott McTominay who, in my personal opinion, isn't good enough right now. You've got Kobbie Mainoo, who's an 18-year-old kid who's performing much better than the senior players right now. But as soon as you thrust an 18-year-old kid into the spotlight straight away, it could ruin them. It could ruin them because all the pressure's on their shoulders. And in my opinion, I think that's what's happened to Marcus Rashford. Think back to when he first debuted in the Europa League and then the league game as well afterwards. As an 18-year-old, he was a fantastic player. He still is a fantastic player. But in my opinion, I think he was given the spotlight way too soon. And I think they put all their hopes on an 18-year-old at the time because some of the senior players weren't cutting it. They did the same, in my opinion, with Garnacho at times. They've done the same with Mainoo at the minute. They need to give Mainoo time. They need to let him bed in. They need to let him, just give him time. And I get United have the history of bringing through their youngsters. In my opinion, I mean, Mainoo's already had the breakthrough year. I think this needs to be an in and out season where he works with the under-21s team still. He still works with the senior team on occasion. If there's a game where you need that player to fill in that role to rest a couple of the seniors, fair enough, give him the chance. But don't. My hope for United is don't start Mainoo every match. Don't put Mainoo in that spotlight every match just to avoid getting a centre midfielder in January, especially if Casemiro gets sold. Lindelof, decent player. Should he deserve a new contract? In my personal opinion, if United want to move forward and become a constant top 4, top 3, top 2 trophy winner, in my opinion, no. He's been there long enough. I think he needs to go to somewhere like, I don't even know where he'd go, but he needs to go somewhere else. I think Lindelof has got the potential to be a better defender than he is now, and I think he needs a different atmosphere to do that. Wan-Bissaka, again, I think he needs a different atmosphere to be a better player. Martial's been nearly at Manchester United for a decade. The reason why I won't go too much in on Martial is because the media's already taken care of that. So what I'll say about Martial is he needs a different atmosphere to become a better player at this current moment in time. To be that out-and-out striker, he needs game time. And for game time, he needs to go somewhere else. Because in my opinion, Højlund is the number one, and then you bring in another striker to give him that rest time, that inexperienced striker that's going to give him that rest time, but still fill the goals missed by Højlund, potentially going forward. But Martial isn't the player to do that. And I'm not going to comment much on Martial now because I think the media's already taken care of that in the mainstream. And I think that he's been radicalised in the press for so long now. And I think that Martial just needs that break. I think more of the English players need the kick up the backside at the moment because they seem to be getting it less in the net than people like Martial. Once upon a time, Paul Pogba was the problem. Once upon a time, Cristiano Ronaldo was the problem. And then they turn on the manager. What about some of the British players that haven't been good enough consistently over seasons that are still here? What about the owners who we hear a bit of noise about the owners from the fans, then it dies down again when we win a few games, and when the manager starts having problems and reported fallouts and all the usual leaks start coming back out again, the noise about the Glazers seems to die down and it turns into Ten Hag noise. And I watched the clip of him at full time. He was stood on the touchline, staring out into thin air and space, wondering what the hell's going on. It's like an episode. It's like a spin-off of Space Jam. It's like Space Jam, lost in space, just staring into the abyss. And I think he knows deep down that he's going to get it in the neck. But those above him haven't really given him much to work with. Yes, he brought in a few players, but look at the signings he's brought in. Onana, is he better than De Gea? No. I still think De Gea was an agenda base. I still think the people who had an agenda against David De Gea forced that guy out and forced the club to force him out. And I still think De Gea is a better goalkeeper at this moment in time. Amrabat, didn't do well tonight. He's a 10 HAG player and he can adapt better in a system with 10 HAG players around him or more 10 HAG players around him. But Amrabat, for me, just wasn't great tonight. Yeah, it's one of them. It's one of them where I generally don't know where to start with the problems because I think there's so many problems. But comment down below your thoughts, guys. I generally like to know your thoughts. I hope you like this little video. I say little, it's about 20 minutes. But yeah, comment down below your thoughts and I'll reply to every single comment as usual. I may do a follow-up video on this with your comments. So put the comments down below and I might do a follow-up video sort of getting your thoughts on what we need to do and comment on your opinions and let's start the healthy debate going. Keep it respectful, obviously. If you don't agree with anything I've said, keep it respectful in the comments down below. Of course, stay kind, be kind. And stay safe, everybody. And I am the CHALL. I am a Doncaster Rovers fan, speaking as a neutral about Manchester United, which is a weird thing, I know. But hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to do something tomorrow or Monday about the Donny Accrington game. But that is it for now. Ta-ra for now.